Let's work with images in Quartz Composer. First, we're going to need to put up an image importer. Next, we're going to need an image to give it. I'm going to send it off to Library Desktop Pictures Nature Aurora, which is the classic OS X wallpaper. But I'm going to need something to display it on. So I'm going to make a billboard. Then I'm going to drag the image output to the image input. Okay. But, oh no, that doesn't look quite right, does it? Well, we can fix that up a little bit by just changing the width to 2, and sure enough, there. Now you're probably wondering, why do I have to change the number of width to 2? Well, that actually does just double the width of the picture, and if you go into the details of how the billboard works, you can see you have auto height, auto width, custom size, and a few others. That's really beyond the scope of our tutorial right now, so we're just going to ignore it. But for most of the things you're going to do right now, if you want to double the size, just, well, double the number from 1 to 2. Okay, that's pretty neat, but you can take it further. How about if you want to, say, browse a whole directory worth of images? Well, you can do it. The directory scanner. And as it happens, it already points to a desktop pictures folder, but I'm going to point it over to nature instead. Okay, well, that sounds easy enough. So we just drag file list over to image. No, we don't. It's the wrong data type. What type is it? Well, it's structure. Well, that might be a bit confounding, so let's try typing structure into our library to see what happens. Well, we get a few things. This looks kind of interesting. Library utility structure. Count? I don't really want to count it. Range? I don't know. Reverse? I don't think so. Sort sounds kind of interesting. But what we're actually after is index member, which is a whole lot more confusing than it actually is. Confusing sounding than it actually is. So let's drag the file list into the structure, and you'll notice that. Well, I suppose not yet. And okay, that should do it. Let's drag it over to the image. But what happens? Well, nothing seems to happen. What is going on? Let's mouse over and find out. Well, here's our structure. You can see how it has all sorts of members. It looks a little overwhelming, but slow down, it isn't. Now we fed that into our structure index member, and instead we see this, name, URL. Well, that's not quite what we want, is it? What are these weird numbers? Well, you might have noticed we separated 26 members down to 2. Well, we need to do it again. So let's grab the member and feed it into the structure once more, and then feed that into the billboard. Well, that's not quite what we wanted, but it seems to be a step in the right direction. Okay, what do we do now? Well, let's examine the structure members a little more. Now, you remember how over here we see that we have a name and a URL? Well, let's try say that. You'll notice over at index, it's index 0, which gives us our aurora.jpg name. Let's change that to 1. Change that to 1. And Quartz Composer is fighting me for a moment. One moment, folks. Change that to 1, and you'll notice we have a URL. Pretty confusing looking. What can we use this for? Do you remember how we imported an image? Well, sure enough, you plug the URL into the image location, plug the image it gets from that into the image input port in Billboard, and voila, there is our wallpaper. Well and good, but how is this a slideshow? How is this a pictures folder? I only see one image. Well, because that's only the index we're at. For instance, I could say input index 1. It's a different wallpaper. Because if you look, you'll see that we have name aurora.jpg, circs.jpg, clownfish.jpg, and so on, along with its URL. One being the name, the other being where the file is located. We split these up so we can use them. So what we really need is some way to interact with this index value. let's use the keyboard. Okay, now the keyboard patch might look a little different on your machine, but you can define what keys you want to use. I'd like to use the up, down, left, and right arrows, but you can use whatever you want. And it's just as easy pushing plus or minus to add or remove. Okay, well, you say, let's add this to the index like I said. Okay, left up arrow. Let's see this work. Uh-oh, it went back. That's not what we were shooting for either. Well, that's because the keyboard has Boolean inputs. It only has values of 0 and 1, and our structure goes all the way up to 26. So that's not going to work for us. Luckily enough, we can use a counter. So instead, let's put our increasing signal into, say, the right arrow going forward, and step back. Let's do the left arrow, stepping back. And we'll put the count of that into the index. Let's try it out. Sure enough, works like a charm. Okay, do you understand what's happening? We're sending a message from the keyboard to the counter. And when you push the right arrow, it increases the number, or signal. And when you push the left arrow, sure enough, it decreases the signal, or number. And then we plump that number, the count, to the index, which is what we wanted to do. But let's take this one step further. Wouldn't it be nice to know the name of the image you're viewing? Well, there are different ways to view text, but we're going to use a new patch to 10.6 called instructions. And let's make another structure index member so we can feed the name of the image off to the instructions. We'll use text here. And you'll notice that I have the URL again, but that's not what I want. So let's turn the index member back to 0. And remember, if it's not working, just have a look, fudge around with things until it works. This is a learning experience. And now that I've piped the name into instructions, you can see that we have text in our composition. And we can just move left and right like that. Pretty spiffy, huh? You just made an interactive application of sorts. Well, there we go. And it didn't take much time, and it didn't take a line of code. And it is just one of the many things you can do with Quartz Composer without writing a single line of code. That's all for now. Good luck!